Hi, I'm Fat Tony, and we're going to talk about, we're getting real, right?
Yeah.
So basically, I was born a cis male, which I hate that terminology, cis. I find, for me, I find it just sounds dirty. It's like a word that
what
just
does it even mean, though, cis?
I don't know what it means, but yeah, I'm using
It means when your mind and your body align.
Yeah, but where?
Yeah, but mine never did. Because what I was about to say was in 1983 to 80. Oh, there goes my phone. I was really clever. In 1983 to 85, for 2 years, I identified as trans. Every time I went out the house, dressed as a woman. And at first, it was just shock. At first, it was a rebellion. It was like I grew up with my dad was a 6'4" builder with fingers like bananas, you know, and yeah, a bit like you two, but like literally it was, you know, it was a rebellion, and of course, you know, the more attention that I got by being like that, the more I loved it, and you know, and I kind of got into it, and then I decided at that point I'm going to be a woman. I feel like a woman. I want to be a woman. I have more fun being that way, and. You know, and then 2 years later, I got to the decision where that wasn't for me. And people go, oh, you know, it was a phase. But what is a phase? It wasn't a phase, you know, because I've spent the rest of my life hiding that fact. I've spent the rest of my life denying that fact, even though it was well documented. I mean, at 16 and 17, I 6 pages in British Vogue dressed as Dusty Springfield with Michael Roberts. Yeah. You know, I did the whole Joseph Tricot campaign as a woman. And that was in 1985. I mean, things have changed since then. I mean,
I wouldn't say that that's completely changed, though, because I think a lot of, you mentioned people getting almost addicted to the attention from when they go out. And I think a lot of people can kind of get a little bit lost in that attention and not understand the attention that then lacks when they're not all dressed up. And I think that there is a conversation around that, that some people get lost in it.
So for me, I'm under no illusion of the fact that I was born a man, but you know, at that time when I was dressing as a woman and I wanted to be a woman, I actually really felt like I was a woman. But you know what? I come from that era of everybody at that point in time was dressing up. We were going out, and everyone had their own identities. You know, I come from the era of all the greats, from Lee McQueen to Lee Bowery to everybody. We all grew up, and London was a very different place then. It was a very small knit community that went out clubbing. It was called the West End. I was doing it in the daytime, yeah. Well, I was coming home 3 days later, so I had classes in the daytime.
Was it not harder, though, to be out in the daytime than with sort of like your own tribe in the night?
It was harder in the sense of walking around Brixton thinking that I looked like, you know, I thought I was amazing. And really, at that point, I was 18 stone. So no one was going to come near me. No one was going to say anything to me. Yeah. You know, I was a fat little heifer on a mission in 6-inch heels. So you put 6-inch heels on someone who's 6'1".
Me.
6'7", and you get this. No, but you know, so for me, that was the difference. I mean, what was it like for you? When did you realise that you wanted to transition? What was it like growing up?
Mine, I've been so like lucky and blessed in my life. So I grew up in South Wales. And I come from a really liberal family, and my parents were both like punks in the 80s, yeah. And I come from a super liberal background, and my parents never tried to put things in boxes, like, oh, that's for boys, you need to do that, that's for girls, you shouldn't do that. So for me, gender roles never really were a thing, and then I went to a school that put me into girls' classes when I was like in my early teens, because they saw that's where I learned better. So I came from this environment where nobody was like, you shouldn't be doing this. So because of that, I was kind of able to sort of come of age at a time and in a place where no one was putting any pressure on me. So I never got that. I've never really been able to empathize with the commonplace trans experience of being trapped, because I was never trapped. Nobody was ever trapping me. So then I sort of came to terms with it when I was about 17. And when I started telling people, it was like I was the last one to know. When I started saying to people, like, I feel like this is the next step, because I started hormones when I was 18. So it was, when I told people, they were just like, oh, that makes sense, you know, like taking medication to be who you are. It was never like this big, shocking reveal.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me it was so smooth and so easy, and that sort of confidence that I was instilled with as a kid has exuded in me later in my life, and it's become the person that I am now.
I mean, I never actually experienced that coming out either. I was always out. You know, I was always the loudest. I was always the one running around wearing my mum's clothes. You know, all of that stuff that weren't persuaded, and the circle of friends that I had, I never needed to come out. You know, I remember leaving primary school and starting at my secondary school, and I had a wet look perm which went down all the way back to my arse. And I used to put country boy and gel in it, and I used to go to school, and they used to call me Sally at school. And I was like so mortified, the fact that I thought, oh my God, they've sussed me out. But I was walking around looking like Barbara bloody Streisand. You know what I mean? And it was like, so, you know, and that kind of just like led me to not wanting to be at school and not wanting to fit in. Because, you know, it was, as I say, it was more of the society around me that made the way I felt change.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, for me, when I was a child, I was really effeminate. I didn't know why. And then when I was 13...
How did that change? No, I'm joking.
I remember being at home one afternoon when I was about 13, and there was a chat show on with... and they were interviewing Caroline Cossey, who was the famous model that got outed by the news of the world. And I literally was like, I fell on the floor. I was like, oh my God, that's me. So from the age of 13, I was just like tunnel vision, that's who I am, that's who I'm going to be. And then I went to private school, and in my mind I was like going to school, and I pretended I had long hair, and I was I had a bob, and I kept going to the headmaster's office, and he was like, you've got to cut your hair short. I'm like, I'll do it, I'm going to do it. So I was supposed to go to do A-levels and go to university, but in those days, which was like the early 90s, I was just like, I need to be me, I can't go for university hiding this. So I left school and I went to college and I started studying makeup. And in the meantime, I told my family, and they were cool. So I did a year at college as a boy doing makeup, and then I was really, really depressed. So I was like, I can't do this anymore. So my mum got the college lecturer over, and we explained the situation. She said, well, just write this down and we'll read it out to the class, and then you can come back after Christmas dressed as a girl.
And what year was that?
Shade.
1964.
No, the reason...
No, that was like...
1802.
92. I changed, 92. I started living as a girl on
Boxing
Day 1992.
Wow.
I got up and I got dressed up, and me and my mum went to the local shop, and we were just gigging in like children.
It's kind of like, you know, in society today, with Jamie and Jamie the Musical and all that stuff, you know, that's nothing new.
Oh my God, there was nothing
not new.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? But you know, because of social media and the world that we live in, and the means that are the way things get seen and you know, identified differently, it's because of social media. And in 1992, if we had social media, you would...
Yeah, it would have been a whole lot more... I mean, I come from a small town, and it was tough. I remember people, like, checking things out of windows, like driving along the van chucking cans at me. I got spat in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not nice, but, yeah. I was so focused, I was like, I'm not going to stay living in this town, just finish studying and get out. But now when I go back, people don't know me, so it's fine. And anyway, I'm a different person now.
Of course you are.
Chuck something back at them.
6 new faces since then, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
And how do you think today, like growing up in that society and not having to come out and the way you are, and when you see the struggle with other people, and sometimes I see people that are struggling, and I get messages on Instagram, which is it's amazing, the amount of people that message me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just want to shake them.
Yeah.
The best advice I can give is just fucking wake up.
Yeah.
You know, because we live in this world where we all want to be a victim, and we all want people to be like, oh, you don't know what it's like for me. Yes, we do.
Totally.
You know, I've been called transphobic in the past. I used to be trans. Don't tell me I'm transphobic. But, you know, it's like if I have an argument with somebody, we were discussing this downstairs, if I have an argument with somebody who happens to be trans, that doesn't make me transphobic. That makes me having an argument with that person. If I have an argument with somebody who's black, and that doesn't make me a racist. But you know what? We all jump on that straight away. Okay, you're transphobic. Okay, you're racist. Because of society and social media and everything that we read and the way we're meant to be.
People have been
social
so
media,
insecure about...
Social media has benefited us as much as it's detrimented us, I think. Because I was I mean, I started transitioning 2008, 2009, and I feel like my sort of years were the last ones to just miss the social media boom. Because, I mean, we had internet, but there was no, like, it was like MySpace. Like, there was no, it was nothing, you know? And I just missed that. And then, obviously, in the most recent years, everyone's a keyboard warrior, and everybody is now armed with all of these words that we never knew. Like, I learn new words about these things all the time, and to see them thrown around, it can be really detrimental to people.
Literally, like the trans word, the tranny word, right? You know, if you come from the black community and you use the N word, it's acceptable if you're using it within your own community. Now, if you use the trans word, like the tranny word within the trans community, you get shunned for it, right?
Yes and no. I mean, it depends on who you're with. Like, Johanna and I would never care about saying it to each other. No, nor me. Right? And I use the word, like, openly, because I think that there's a huge history within subcultures of reclaiming slurs that are used against you. You look at the way that, if you go into any of the clubs that we're at, you listen to the way that gay men talk to each other. What's the first thing they call each other?
Girl.
Yeah, like they always call each other.
Well, I don't.
There's worse, a lot worse.
Yeah, hello.
We've got a history of reclaiming these words. And for me, saying, when I get told you can't say the word tranny, it's my word to you.
It's done in the context of how you say it.
Totally, it's with the intent.
But also at the same time, we spent our lives being told you can't. Yeah. And then when we get to that age where we can, and it's our choice to say what we want and be who we want, and then we get our own community saying to us, you can't. Yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
End of story. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's from our own community that it all stems.
I mean, we call ourselves Barry and Keith, as everyone knows, Barry and Keith.
It's the Barry, Keith and Tony show.
I've had people message me saying, I find it's not a positive thing that you're doing because you're sort of making a joke. It's like, no.
But you're in a place that you can make it a joke. But it's like I'm 11.5 years in recovery. I make all day long, I spend on Instagram putting drug jokes up because I find it funny. Because it's my story, it's where I've been, and it's who I am. Yeah. And I mean, I've earned that badge to laugh at that. If I can't laugh at myself, which is primarily what I'm doing, is laughing at myself.
Exactly. And it's about not taking yourself too seriously and being comfortable in your own skin.
And you hit the nail on the head, it's about being comfortable. It's about being comfortable. And you go, and then that word crops up, normal. Do you know what people love to use? And it's like, who in this planet wants to be normal?
And who is normal?
And also, yeah, exactly.
No one's normal. Everyone's got something going on.
And what do you think about when you see people that suddenly start banging shields and start doing that? I'm doing this for our community. I'm doing this for them, and they're not because all they are is doing it themselves.
All they're doing is like sitting there talking about themselves. If you want to be a role model for the community, you need to be out there in the community, successful as a person. And the trans label is secondary. It's not.
Yeah, if the only thing that somebody has got to talk about is their gender first and not what they have achieved, regardless of that gender, then I don't know. I think there's a lot of people would call themselves now. I think the word activism is completely lost in this generation.
I don't walk into a room and the first thing I say is I'm gay.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day that's my business. But I don't care what anyone thinks in that sense. I don't care. Someone says, oh God, I make jokes of it. The gays have arrived, when we turn up at parties and stuff like that. And I just think that there's so many people because of social media yet again that think they have a voice, and all they're doing is sitting at home saying what they want to say behind a keyboard.
But an Instagram following does not make you an activist.
Oh, it so doesn't. No,
especially when you buy half your followers.
Most of your followers are cats and dogs. Do you know what I mean? It's like they can't even write. But we won't go there. But so, what do you think today? If is the ingredient for you to be yourself in the sense of where you've got and where you come? Because I've known you both for a long time, a hell of a long time. Dani. No, but it's like, and we've known each other, we've grown up within that clubbing environment and within the world. And it goes from the club to reality to real life and then beyond.
Yeah.
And if there's people watching this, because I think it's really important to say to people who you are, who you should be, right? Like, in the sense of, if that's what you want to do, do it, and regardless of what anyone else
You just have to
thinks.
get yourself, as long as you're comfortable in your skin, genuinely comfortable in your skin, not searching to be something you're not, then you whatever anyone says doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You know? And how you present yourself in terms of, I mean, I go out dressed in extremely OTT looks with a high heel, and I don't get any negative attention.
No, you don't,
because
you look incredible.
I don't put a negative energy out. I'm really just open. But if I went out and was like different, what are you looking at? Then I can expect to get a negative feedback.
Yeah. Because you know, it's like anything. What you put out, you get back.
Yeah.
So if you're walking around with that attitude of like,
it's the law of attraction.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like I say, we lead by example in everything we do. You know, if I want to spend the day being a complete arsehole, I attract arseholes.
Yeah.
And that's a fact.
Yeah.
You know, if I start the day in a really positive place, and which is very rare, no, but I start the day in a positive place, that kind of seeps through everything that I do in that day. And you know, and that defines who I am today. You know, because there's days where you don't want to come near me.
There's a lot of days that I don't want to go near you.
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot more days that I don't run from you. So, yeah, I mean, and what do you think, when you mentioned about going back home, when you go home, do you get double looks? No, because you look so amazing, right?
I mean, for me, the big change was when I did facial feminization surgery. It was only like a subtle difference, but it sort of brought my face into harmony. Like before that, in the daytime, there'd be certain types of people, certain groups of people that would spot me. Like the black community, funnily enough, women from the black community, they would always spot me. Arabic women would spot me. Teenage girls. But as soon as I did that, it just took that away.
Did you notice that the problem there, though, is haven't you found, I have in my life, that the people that have the problem with you are women?
Yeah.
I think
that's because you look better than them?
I mean, you don't want to say that, though.
Oh, I do. I just said it. But, you know, the majority...
The problem
do you think that you make them feel inferior?
Yeah, it's intimidation.
I think almost as well, yeah, they almost feel like you're kind of stepping on their territory. It's a territorial thing. The problems that I have faced in my life walking down the street, I've never had a problem with a man in the street. Never once. I've had problems with women in a million places.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think it's... from everything you said there, it's women are the one thing that carry through. I've always had issues with women.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you know...
Or gay men, actually. Gay men, too.
Are they the worst, right?
Gay men can be really bad. But with us, can't they?
I mean, maybe I'm just oblivious to that.
You know, let's talk about what happened on Saturday at Gay Pride, right? Okay. Very controversial. The fact that there was a very small group of activist lesbians hijacked the Gay Pride March in London.
Yeah.
And they were anti-trans. Now, these people were allowed to march because they were at the front of the march and they caused such a stir that Pride London let them march. Yeah. Which goes against everything that we believe in as a Pride March. But, you know, that happened. Yeah. I mean, that's our community fighting our community.
Yeah.
You know, that is the LGBT. Do you know what I mean? We're all in one sentence there. We're all in, like, we're in one label, and we stand united. Yeah. And when that type of things happens within our community, you just think, hang on a minute, what's going on? Yeah.
There's a lot of division within the LGBT community, though, isn't there?
I mean,
a lot of people are too busy trying to slap labels on instead of fighting one bigger cause that we're all here for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
And ultimately, the beginning of like LGBT was like trans women.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah, Marsha P. Dante.
Yeah. Let's talk about, you know, Stonewall. Let's talk about those riots. Let's talk about the reason why we're here today and that we had the freedom that we have. It wasn't to do with a bunch of lesbians at the start of a gay pride march. It was because it was people standing up for believing in who they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what paved the way for today's society, the way we are. We live in a bubble. We live in London. We live in we're wrapped in cotton wool, you know, a majority of the time. I mean, I walk around, my sexuality of who I am allows me to be who I am. I walk around, I don't ever live in fear of thinking, oh my God, I can't go there because I'm gay, or oh my God, I'm going to get queer bashed. I don't have that fear. And that's because I kind of think, I don't know why I don't have that fear. It's kind of weird.
To us, it doesn't exist, though, does it?
No.
Like, it's just like we're in this bubble.
Yeah, we are in a bubble.
Completely.
And outside of that bubble, you know, as I said earlier, when I wear pink and I walk down Oxford Street, I get more dirty looks as if I just robbed someone's handbag, the dirty looks I get, because I'm wearing pink. And that's pink.
Maybe it's like, just not your colour.
It is my colour, honey. Fuck you. Yeah, whatever. No, I mean, that's a colour pink. And, you know, straight away, they see a guy walking towards them wearing pink, and they think straight away, oh, he's gay. And that's the only time that I actually feel that. And I had this conversation with people at Adidas the other day, because they did quite a lot of pink in this collection. I was like, do you as a straight man get that same thing? And they were like, yeah, they do. And it's kind of weird. It's part just from a colour.
Yeah, but that's just a projection of that person's insecurity and what's going on in their head, isn't it? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so insightful when there's that negativity, because you're thinking that's just coming from where your head is at, love. You know?
Yeah, it's totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, what would you say to somebody who's going through what we never went through, the whole coming out period of realising that they are trapped within somebody else's body, in the wrong body, and that they want to fight that freedom to be who they are? What would you say to them?
I'm like you said, like, I mean, my social media following is not nearly as big as yours, but I still get contacted a lot by young, not even young trans kids, trans people of all ages from all different countries, all asking, like, what would you tell us as the beginning bit? Like, what advice would you give? And yeah, I mean, I think initially it's literally just a case of believing that it gets better. And second of all is not comparing yourself to other people. I find one of the biggest problems for young trans people is onlooking at other trans people that may have been older or have started at a different time or come from a different background or
different chapters.
Yeah, and I always say to young trans people, like, do not compare yourself to another person. You're going to get there. You already got this far of realising it, which is more than most people at this point. Like, if you're realising it this early on, you're already at one step ahead. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing and just get on with it.
I think you said the key word there was belief. Really.
Absolutely,
It's about believing in who you are and believing that, I think when it comes to most things in life, as soon as you believe, you're halfway there.
Completely.
Halfway there, always. And what about you?
And also education, because as a transgender person, there's a whole spectrum of levels. Like, for me, it was literally black and white. I need to have full gender reassignment surgery. And I didn't feel comfortable in my skin until I did that, which was at 21. Incidentally, 21 years ago this year.
Wow.
No, like, it's gone like that.
And 21 years ago, when you transitioned and had that operation, that was kind of, I mean, obviously, I've got loads of other people, but in our society, there wasn't that many people doing that 21 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember I lived with I lived in a squat in Cranley Gardens, and I lived with a transsexual called Marie, and she was going for gender reassignment, and the drama that she had to go through to get to that stage of being accepted, she had to live as a woman for a certain amount of years, and the backlash once she got a transition, when she got rid of her three-piece suite, as I said at the time, when she got rid of that and she transitioned, the amount of backlash that she got from other transsexuals, other trannies as we called them back then, it was horrifying.
In what way? Why were they?
Because they just turned so nasty against. Yeah, it was jealousy. 100%. Yeah. It was jealousy. It was resentment. And, I remember coming home one night and they'd broken in and they were beating her up. And this was 2 weeks after she had her transitioned. Yeah,
Do you still know her?
You know what? I'd love to know where she is, because she was an amazing person and she probably still is. But, she went off and did her own thing. She did, we were friends for many years. And
went stealth.
Yeah, literally, yeah. Like most people do within that. People go clubbing, you meet them, they move on. What would you say, right? What do you think about the world that we live in now with RuPaul's Drag Race and all the amazing things that do you think that helps the transsexual community, or it puts things backwards. Because you know, that's drag, and the difference between drag and transsexuals is totally different. We all know that.
Yeah.
I think it's a mix of both, really.
I mean, it's opening people's eyes.
Yeah.
It opened a bigger conversation. Like, I particularly don't feel in any way represented by Caitlyn Jenner.
No.
At all. I don't feel represented by her. I think, that, you know, we've all had that conversation about her. However, her being so public about her transition opened a conversation and gave people a relatable thing to look at within the media that allowed a wider range of acceptance.
But at the same time, the amount of memes that were made about it and the amount of backlash that, you know, did that not affect the community more? Because of her being who she is.
That's what I mean, is it was as damaging as it was beneficial, in the same way that things like Drag Race, because Drag Race has got openly trans people on it now. And I think that these things are kind of peaks and troughs.
But also, the mere fact that we're sitting and having to discuss that shows you how much further we've got to go.
Yeah. Oh my God, totally. We're not.
Because the fact that we're saying, oh, Caitlyn Jenner, you know, not everybody likes Caitlyn Jenner, but at the same time, you've got to respect her. She became who she wanted to be, and yes, she did it in the public eye.
Yeah, that's the thing. She had to do it in the public eye, which must have been so tough, you know.
Yeah,
100%.
But I mean, the movement of it becoming more visible will eventually lead to like a bigger picture. You look at when Queer as Folk came on television. I equate Caitlyn Jenner to Queer as Folk. It might not have been the best thing to represent us, but it made us more visible. Yeah. You know? And
it was a voice.
Totally. And even like for trans women like Jo and I, who are not seeing it at the beginning now, at some point in our lives, we're going to see the knock-on impact of that in like dating life. Like, men are not going to be as ashamed.
Yeah, I was
things
gonna,
like that.
That was going to be my next question about men. Now, because you know, there's a certain type of man that goes after transsexuals, and
not always, but yeah.
Well, I mean, when I was doing it, there was this guy, and I'm not going to name and shame him, but he was the hottest guy in London. He was on the cover of The Face. He was literally, everybody wanted this guy. And I one night was out in a pink dress with candy written down the front of it, with pink hair. Now, pink hair, and
sounds like Johanna.
No, it does sound like Johanna. Yeah, it's like, but you know, this was like a long time ago, back in the 1800s. But no, I was out with him, and I went back to his house the next night as a boy, and he basically jumped on me because he'd seen me the night before dressed as a woman. And I remember he was in the shower, and I was ringing all my mates from his phone by his bed, going, guess where I am? and it was like the biggest coup for me. It was the biggest coup. And then never spoke about it ever again. The next day I saw him.
Well, that's the thing, is the shame that comes with it. You know?
Yeah, and you know, obviously, do you get so much attention from the wrong type of guy that are like only in it because because you're transitioning or you're transitioned? Yeah. I mean, I used to know a friend as well who only dated pre-ops.
Well, that's really common. That's really common.
Because they want the dick, right? Is it?
Yeah. But that's the problem, is when someone who's trans attracted wants to go dating, they're not going dating thinking like, I want to go out with a really funny girl or who likes, I don't know, football. They are thinking of a physical thing that you are.
Fetish, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, I hope that we see the turn in that.
But I mean, surely that I mean, as someone who is transitioning, that could be that's like they're wanting you to be who you're not because you've got that dick.
It's a minefield. It's a nightmare. Yeah. It's awful. It's why I've backed away from dating now in my life, because it's just like it's exhausting.
Yeah, the same.
And when you transitioned, did you find we're going to end on this, but when you transitioned, did you find that those type of men disappeared?
Yeah, they're not interested in me. Like the guys that are into trans are not interested in me. So my challenge is straight guys that can get their head around my history. Yeah. Or not telling them. And I've done that, which is a novelty, but I like people to know.
Well, I just think, okay, we're going to wrap this up, but I mean, you know, you both made my hair stand on my hand on my arm, because, you know, I love you both and I love who you are, and the fact that we can come here and talk about this so openly without banging shields and screaming and shouting and trying to make the biggest noise as possible, because this is reality, and this is who you are, and I love you both for it.
Thank you.